Tunda woke up in a dimly lit room, his head throbbing and his hands bound tightly behind his back. The air was damp and cold, carrying the faint smell of mildew. He blinked, trying to adjust to the darkness, but the room was shrouded in shadows, the only light coming from a small crack under the door. "Where am I?" he muttered, his voice hoarse and barely audible. The last thing he remembered was being dragged into a black van by masked men. He had shouted, struggled, and pleaded, but they had ignored him, their faces hidden behind dark cloth. Now, he was here, wherever here was. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. It was one of the masked men, his eyes cold and unreadable. He carried a lantern, its flickering light casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Who are you?" Tunda demanded, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. "What do you want from me?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he placed the lantern on the floor and left, locking the door behind him. Tunda's mind raced. Was this about the murder accusation? Was it connected to the mysterious woman from the pleasure den? Or was it something else entirely? Hours passed, or maybe it was days. Tunda couldn't tell. The kidnappers brought him food and water, but refused to speak to him. His mind began to play tricks on him, blurring the line between reality and illusion. One night, the door opened again, and a familiar figure stepped inside. It was Abike, his sister. Tunde's eyes widened in shock. "Abike, what are you doing here? Did they kidnap you too? Please tell me you didn't follow me to the alleyway." Abike smiled, but it wasn't the warm, reassuring smile Tunda remembered. It was cold, calculating. "No, Tundi," she said, her voice calm and steady. "I'm not a prisoner here. I'm the one who arranged all of this." Tunde stared at her, his mind struggling to process her words. "What are you talking about? This isn't funny, Abike." "It's not a joke," she replied, her tone sharp. "You think you're the victim in all of this, but you're not. You're the reason our family is falling apart." Abike stepped closer, her eyes blazing with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You came back from abroad, thinking you could just waltz in and take over Daddy's empire. But you didn't care about the consequences. You didn't care about the people you hurt along the way." Tunda shook his head, confused. "What are you talking about? I didn't hurt anyone." "Didn't you?" Abike snapped. "What about the woman at the pleasure den? What about Ajoke? You think her death was just a coincidence? Tunda, you're a fool. Why would you drink a strange liquid from someone you never met, just because you wanted to sleep with her?" She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The potion you drank wasn't just a hallucinogen. It was a binding spell. It connected you to the spirit world, making you vulnerable to their influence. The snake woman, the chase, the murder. It was all designed to break you, to make you pay for what you've done. Right now, you are far from reality." Tunda's heart pounded as the pieces began to fall into place. "But why? Why would you do this to me?" Abike's voice softened, but her eyes remained cold. "You don't remember, do you? When we were kids, you were always Daddy's favorite. He sent you abroad, gave you everything, while I was left here to pick up the pieces. And then, when you came back, you didn't even notice how much I'd done to keep the family together. You just waltzed in, expecting to take over everything, acting all bossy and pushing everybody around." She paused, her hands trembling with suppressed emotion. "But that's not even the worst part. Do you remember the night you went to the pleasure den? Do you remember what you did?" Tunda frowned, trying to recall. "I didn't do anything. I just went there to relax." Abike shook her head. "You met Ajoke that night. She wasn't just a random woman. She was my friend. And you hurt her. You didn't even realize it, but you destroyed her life. And then you were meant to walk away, like it was nothing." Tunda's mind reeled as her words sank in. He had been so caught up in his own world that he hadn't noticed the pain he was causing. But before he could respond, the door opened again and the masked men returned. Abike turned to leave, but Tunda called out to her. "Abike, wait! You can't do this. I'm your brother." She paused in the doorway, her back to him. "You stopped being my brother the moment you forgot about me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Then she walked out, leaving Tunde alone with his captors. Then a ray of light flashed by his eyes. "Ogre, shut up, you're making noise!" one of the kidnappers barked, his voice gruff. Another figure, their boss, stepped forward. "What's the issue?" he asked, his tone commanding. The first kidnapper shrugged. "He's been talking to himself, shouting, 'Abike, Abike, Abike.' This guy's mind is really messed up for good. I think he's hallucinating again." The boss laughed, a low, menacing sound. "We need to hurry things up before he finally runs mad in this place. Nobody will pay that kind of ransom for a raving mad son." Tund cried profusely, realizing that he had been hallucinating. There was no Abike. His sister had not visited him. He was all alone in the kidnapper's den. Yet amidst his despair, he felt a strange relief, knowing that his sister was not part of this chaos. Days passed, and the situation grew more dire. Tunde's father, overwhelmed by stress, collapsed while walking down the stairs in their mansion. He was rushed to the hospital, where he lay weak and pale, his spirit broken. Tunde's lawyer visited him in the hospital, her face filled with worry. "Chief," she said, her voice trembling, "I understand you're not well, but this is a serious issue. The judge called me, and he's furious. He's threatening hell and thunder if this ever leaks to the media. He said he will deny any involvement and make sure we all pay for failing so dearly and making a mockery of his kindness to help your son escape." The family has been thrown into further chaos. Tunde, who was meant to be in prison, was now held in a kidnapper's den. They couldn't go to the police, and they couldn't make it public. They were at a crossroads with very limited options. Some days later, the family received a call from the kidnappers. It was their boss, his voice cold and intimidating. "Listen carefully," he said. "We want you to package 100 million naira in cash. Once you have the money, call us. If you don't do as you're told, or you try to act smart, forget about ever seeing your son again." Before they could respond, he hung up. At the kidnapper's den, Tunde was a shadow of his former self. He couldn't distinguish between what was real and what wasn't. He refused to eat or beg, his spirit broken, but his mind still searching for a way out. He began to befriend one of the younger kidnappers, a boy who seemed less hardened than the others. Tunde promised him 2 million naira if he helped him escape. The boy agreed, but warned Tunde that they were expecting a visitor in 3 days. "After that," the boy said, "we can make our move." Tunde's curiosity was piqued. "Who is this visitor?" The boy shook his head. "I don't know. I've never seen him before, but the boss says he's the one who gave us this job." 3 days later, the young kidnapper returned, his face pale with fear. "Tonight's the night," he whispered. "We'll make our move after midnight. Be ready." Tunde's heart pounded as the hours dragged by. Finally, the boy returned, a knife in his hand. He cut Tunde's bonds and helped him to his feet. "Stay close," he said, his voice trembling, "and don't make a sound." They crept through the dark corridors of the kidnapper's den, their footsteps barely audible. But just as they reached the door, a voice rang out. "Where do you think you're going?" It was the boss, his face twisted with rage. He raised his gun and fired, the shot echoing through the night. The young kidnapper crumpled to the ground, blood pooling beneath him. Tunde screamed, but the boss grabbed him, shoving him back into the room. "You think this is a game?" the boss snarled. "This isn't Nollywood. This gun is real. If you try anything stupid again, you'll end up like him." The next day, the kidnappers were in high spirits. The boss gathered them together, his face lit with excitement. "Today's the day," he announced. "The family has the money. We'll be rich by tonight." The men cheered, their guns clinking together as they celebrated their impending payday. But Tunde sat in silence, his mind galloping. He knew his family wouldn't give up without a fight. Unbeknownst to the kidnappers, Tunde's family had hatched a clever plan. As the kidnappers prepared for the ransom drop, Tunde sat in his cell, his heart pounding. He didn't know what was coming, but he prayed they didn't get away with it. He had a sense of tension, of impending chaos. The boss walked in, a smug smile on his face. "Get ready, Tunde. You're going home." What will happen during the ransom drop? Will Tunde's family's plan succeed, or will the kidnappers outsmart them? And who is the mysterious visitor behind all of this? Stay tuned for the next part, where the story takes an even darker and more dramatic turn. Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. See you in the next episode.